feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's cocaine, everything's
Fun.
Open wide for some soccer.
I don't care what you think about what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the
Call
Cowboys.
this college rule.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. Chris and Dom here. And before we begin, as always, we are recording down here at Angle Studio in downtown Tucson for all of your audio needs in this city. Our producer Ty is back there making us sound and look great. And also, make sure you subscribe to our social media platforms. You can see them below there. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Please comment, and if you have suggestions for future episodes, let us know. But pump those numbers up, and we'll keep creating the quality content that we produce.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice intro there. I thought it was interesting that you said that we're recording in Tucson. We're in Tucson.
Yes, we are.
Who are we talking about today?
We are talking about arguably the greatest athlete this city will ever produce, Sean Elliott.
I would think so.
Yeah. We're not working with a really deep bench here, Chris. And we're living in the bleached a-holes of cities. We are. People are going to find out that about Tucson sooner or later.
Sean Elliott, Artemis, Frank. It's not a deep bench. That's all I'm saying.
All I'm saying is, you want to go back behind the Wendy's dumpster and do stuff?
She rolls the ball up, and she does this. Okay.
All right, Sean Elliott. We're back on the hardwood. Sean Michael Elliott, born February 2nd in 1968 in Tucson, Arizona. And born to Mother Otame, who was a single mom, raised Sean and two of his brothers, and worked as a critical care nurse. And Sean, growing up, was quite the athlete. Was good, much like all our other athletes, at other sports.
I was going to say, excelled across the board.
Baseball, Little League All-Star, track and field, set the state age group record in the long jump, and soccer. He was the MVP of his youth team, which is like, no wonder our soccer teams in the United States stink. They never stick with soccer. There was a great story about when he was 13. He was at the gym at Cholla High School, where he went to school here in Tucson. And the head basketball coach, Mel Carl, said, wow, what's going on here? And Sean said, well, my best sport is soccer. And he's 13 years old and almost 6 feet tall.
I was just going to say, he was essentially looking like a senior in high school at this point. So I feel like the coach came in and was just like, all right, we need to make sure a basketball. When somebody asks you that question, your response should now be basketball.
Yeah, exactly. He said, soccer's my best sport. And he just said, son, you should consider playing basketball.
Which he wasn't wrong. It's
a great move for a heck of an athlete. Actually, when Sean was 14, I did want to bring this up, he tore part of his ACL, only he didn't have surgery on it, which is why I always wore a knee brace.
I was going to say, so his ACL fully healed, and he proceeded to wear his knee brace for his entire career.
Yeah.
So even later on, he wears like a smaller one or a compression sleeve. And he was saying, he was just like, I just got so used to it in my formative years playing basketball that it was a part of me.
It would have felt naked without it, pretty much. He, as far as the no surgery part, I had read that because his bones were growing, that's why they didn't go in and clean it up.
Yeah.
Is they just let it heal naturally.
Same thing happened with me and my ex. So, come on. Bones were growing, so they didn't clean it up.
His junior year in high school in 1984, he was playing basketball at the Tucson Athletic Club, and he went there specifically because Ralph Sampson, a guy we've talked about on this podcast, former college great and great for the Houston Rockets. Go listen to our Hakeem Olajuwon episode. He got so excited when on the opposite side of the court the ball rolled to Ralph Sampson, and he handed it to him, and he's like, touch my ball, man. Touch my ball. And I'll bring up later what both of them have in common. But Sean just starts tearing it up at Cholla the second he gets there. The summer of '84, as a junior, he was the all-star for three of the biggest basketball camps in the 1980s, the 5-star in Pennsylvania, the BNC camp in Indiana, and the Superstar camp in Santa Barbara. And September 4th of that year, he decides to commit to a university, and kind of a surprise considering it's not that he's local, it's that other places around Arizona wanted him.
I was just gonna say, so he is a top recruit coming out of the West. All of the California teams want him. You know what I mean? So like, and U of A is not the U of A that everybody knows. This is early time. You know,
In the long ago.
Steve Kerr just shows up. So they're not a powerhouse. They're not even a force in the NCAA championship or in the Pac-10, or I think it might have been the 8 then.
No, Pac-10.
It was 10.
U of A was
Oh, yeah,
last
because,
in
yeah,
the
you're
ASU,
right.
yeah.
So, like, I think that was the thing, but thankfully for U of A, he was a hometown kid because
Yeah.
they definitely wouldn't have gotten him if he was from Phoenix
Oh,
or
heck no.
wherever.
This was a season where Lute Olson was starting his second year as head coach, coming off a 4-24 year and picked 8th in the Pac-10, the preseason poll.
Looking at Lute's career, this
Yeah.
was lucky for him. Like, it's, you know.
This is the beginning, Chris. This
Yep.
is just the beginning. So, January 3rd, 1985, they're playing Saguaro High School. They're on the east side, which is at the time one of the best basketball schools in town here. Olson is in attendance, and Sean drops 48 on him. And Saguaro's head coach, Dick McConnell, said, "He's a future All-American to Lute Olson. He's the best Tucson player I've ever seen. It was the most outstanding performance I've ever seen." And I mean, not a lot of McDonald's All-Americans come out of this town, Chris.
No, and I think that's what the consensus was this is the best player we've ever seen. If you get him to stay, you're going to be so lucky.
Oh,
Because,
yeah.
I mean, he really could have had his pick because he was a top recruit in that time.
Imagine being magically whisked away to Tucson. He even commented, Tucson, at the time, he was like, Tucson is the place you fill up on gas before you go to California.
Yep.
But he wants to start a tradition at the University of Arizona, and it was a 6'8", 205-pound small forward. He's already starting as a freshman, and he's already dominating.
I wonder if that was because sometimes you go to these college programs and they're like, well, freshman year, you're going to sit out and then we'll work you in. And I bet Lute was like, no. You're going to start and be our star right away. And he was.
Best
He's
player on this team.
Yeah, you're going to get the ball as many times as I can get it to you.
So as a freshman, almost 16 points a game, 5.3 rebounds, 2.2 assists, Pac-10 Freshman of the Year.
Yep.
Team won 23 games, and although they lost in the first round of the tournament, this is when U of A starts to become U of A.
Well, I was going to say,
we knew, you know.
They had a 20-plus loss season the year before Sean Elliott shows up, and then a 20-plus win season the year he shows up. So that's what the impact that he had, and then we see him and U of A become like a powerhouse, and Lute Olson become this silver fox that we all know him to do and to produce just wonderful guards, which
Well, yeah. And
Sean Elliott was almost that.
they have a very young team, too, with
Yes,
Steve Kerr, Anthony Cook, and a guy we did an episode on coming off the bench, Kenny Lofton.
Well, I did think it was interesting because I felt like Lute did trust these super young. He was just like, everybody's going to be a freshman or a junior, or a sophomore, and we're just going to go from there.
Yeah.
They really built into this great team.
We're starting to work towards having a deep bench. It's not there yet.
It's not there yet.
It's not there yet. Artemis is smoking weed in the back, playing for Frank's Little Beauties. So, yeah, that year, his freshman year, they also won the Pac-10 tournament at Pauley Pavilion. He dumped in 48 in front of John Wooden and did, on the international team, win the gold medal in FIBA in Spain.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
86-87, Steve Kerr ends up getting hurt. He ends up redshirting, but they had Tom Tolbert and Judd Bushler, who was on all those Last Dance Bulls teams.
Yep.
Leads the team in scoring, 19.3 a game. Also assists, 3.7, and averaged 6 rebounds. They go 18-12, second in the Pac-10, but this year he's named first team All Pac-10. They don't go I think they lose in the first round of the tournament.
Yeah, I think they lost back-to-back first round.
After 2 years, you're thinking this could be the best player in college basketball.
Bull, this could be a really great team. Kerr's coming back, I think, for his senior year.
Yeah.
And then Elliott's in his junior year. So This is like when everybody was surprised because U of A in this season kind of like says like, oh, we are actually a good team.
This is the season where none of these men have to buy drinks in this town again.
It's true.
Essentially. So 87, 88.
Yep.
First team all Pac-10, leads the team in scoring, 19.6 a game. They go 35-3. Ranked number 2 in the final AP poll. They're the number 1 seed. Sean is the Pac-10 Player of the Year, tournament MVP. Just awesome.
Yes.
Just awesome. One of
Best player in the West.
Yeah, easy. They just roll. They steamroll through the tournament, too. They just beat Cornell by 40, then Seton Hall by 29, Iowa by 20, then North Carolina by 18 in the Elite Eight, and they make their first Final Four. Because as far as when you think of Tucson, you really just think of this basketball team.
You do. But that wasn't the case. You didn't think of any sports back then.
No.
And this was the first brick in that wall, and they end up going up against Oklahoma, where the
stuff happens.
and actually they get handled pretty well by like Oklahoma beats them pretty good, which is kind of it's a bummer. They go out. I think Kansas ends up winning the national championship that year. Yeah,
I think Mookie Blaylock was on that Oklahoma team.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
because he does get drafted with Sean Elliott in the same draft class.
Yeah. Consensus All-American, and you're thinking, man, he could probably leave early. But he doesn't. He comes back for one more year at U of A. Comes back to try and finish the job.
And you just don't see that anymore, which I love, because he grabs some records.
Yeah. Pac-10 Player of the Year, Pac-10 Tournament MVP, leads the team in scoring, 22.3 a game, ties for the lead with 7.2 rebounds and 4.1 assists with Kenny Lofton.
Yep.
So you're number 1 or tied for first in all of those statistical categories. Your team goes 29-4, and you're 17-1 in the Pac-10. This was the team that should have. That we talked about it in our Lofton episode.
Yes, this was a team that should have made a Final Four at least.
They were number 1 in the AP final poll before the tournament. They're number 1 seed again. Rolling, beating Robert Morris by 34, Clemson by 26. Sean's looking good. And then they play UNLV in the Sweet 16. And, well, as we talked about in our Kenny Lofton episode, Anderson Hunt basically just stabbed them in the face at the end.
It sucks.
Final shot, lose by 1 point. And that was Sean Elliott's last college game. However, he wins the John Wooden Award, the Adolph Rupp Award, which were won by both of which were won by Ralph Sampson, whom he met at 14. First team All Pac-10, consensus All-American, and he broke a record. Did you want to talk about that for the Pac-10?
He broke Kareem's. We did a Kareem episode literally like years ago, if you want to check that out. But he broke Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's all-time point scoring record for the Pac-10. And he's the all-time point scoring leader for the U of A. And I think that's pretty awesome, and something you're not going to see anymore, because if a player's that good, they're not going to stick around.
Why would they
it's such a ridiculous stat that you're like, oh, no, it could have been broken, but it never will be broken because of the way it's set up.
A couple of good quotes. Jim Herrick, UCLA's coach, said, "Where do you get a player like Sean Elliott? I want one."
Yeah, seriously.
Lute Olson said Sean, and Lute Olson, go listen to that episode too, but one of the best college basketball coaches ever said Sean's the best big game player I've ever seen.
Which I love, because, and we'll talk about it later, where he is the player that you want, because he is just like an all-around team player. And that's really what basketball is, like you were saying. He almost averages 12, 5, and 5. Or you know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah, it's like his career stats pretty much. He's projected lottery pick in the 89 draft, and man, does he get lucky, and the team that takes him get lucky.
I thought this was interesting. I didn't know about this after I did this, or before I did this research. He thought he was going to go 6th to the Bulls. So he trained in the summer with Michael Jordan. And he said, he just goes, we were like clicking. It was like kind of like I would like bring it up the court, and like kind of like what Pippen's role was. And he was just like, I really thought I was going to go there, because everybody was still harping on his knee because he was wearing the brace, and everybody thought he was not injured at the time, but fragile or couldn't make it or whatever, all of that. He drops to third, goes to the Spurs. He said he was so surprised because the Spurs hadn't had any contact with him or his agent. So they literally came out and watched him and like all of that kind of shit.
That's amazing.
But they had zero verbal contact. So literally, he was just like, it went to third. I was already talking to him just like, all right, we might go fourth, because it was just like nothing between them.
Yeah, but maybe just San Antonio was like just keeping it so close to the vest so nobody jumps over them.
I really think that's what it was, because if you look at his career, San Antonio has always been like, no, this guy is really good, and we're going to put our faith in him.
Yeah.
That's why I liked it, though.
This is a pretty stacked draft, too. You have guys like Sean Kemp, who we did an episode on, Tim Hardaway of Run TMC, Vlade Divac, Glenn Rice, Cliff Robinson as well. So, I mean, it's not like, 1984 draft, but it's a lot of good players.
I'll tell you what, it's not as stacked at the top. Sean's the best one to come off the board at 3, and then you get into the 8, 9, 10. What did Kemp go? 12 or something?
Yeah. What was it? The Kings took Purvis Ellison, number 1, who was a huge bust.
Yep.
And then the Clippers took Danny Ferry, who never even played.
That was the one that was like, woo, over Sean Elliott. And that's where you see the Spurs literally
Sure, you want to take those white guys from Duke? They've got a pretty good track record. Said nobody.
They just didn't have contact with him, and they were probably like, all right, this is our guy.
Oh, God. So this is an interesting draft, though, because heading into the 89-90 season is San Antonio almost gets a 2-for-1 deal, because not only do you have Sean Elliott coming in as a rookie, you have David Robinson finally coming back from his naval commitment.
Yep.
And they're joining a very bad team. A bad team.
Just overall, the top to bottom. So they're both essentially rookies.
The year before, 88-89, they went 21-61. Adding both of these players, in addition to other but these are the two biggest moves.
Yep.
They improved by 35 wins. And no disrespect to Terry Cummings or Rod Strickland, but like, come on, man. David Robinson and Sean Elliott.
And he started 69 games in his rookie season. So this was the big detractor, that he couldn't have the longevity in the NBA season. And he immediately was just like, no, I can play 69 games.
Yeah,
so
can. A lot of us can.
Just to start it. That's why I like that a lot. So 10 points a game. And you're right. Literally turns around this entire team with the Admiral.
I mean, the Admiral is like the centerpiece, but like that's the 2-for-1 deal, man.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
It is.
All rookie second team. They go to the playoffs this starts their playoff streak, excluding that one year where both him and Robinson got hurt up until a few years ago. They sweep the Nuggets in the first round, and then they take on Portland, who I believe made the finals that year. They extended the series to 7 games in the Western Conference semifinals. And Sean had better stats in the postseason than he did in the regular season.
Yeah.
So, I mean, things are looking up in San Antonio.
Well, the thing that Lute said, he's a big game player. That's the shit I love,
If Lute Olson says it, it must be true. Or said it. Rest in peace, Silver Fox. 90-91, he starts all 82 games. 15.9 points a game, career high 5.6 rebounds, and they win 55 games.
Yes.
But this is when, we've talked about it in certain episodes, this is when the West just has everybody kind of at the same awesome level.
I was just going to say, so like you go in and there's literally like 4 or 5 teams. You're like, yeah, any one of these teams could win. Sonics, Suns.
This year they
Lakers.
lose to Run TMC and the Warriors.
The Warriors in this time.
Before they were just god-awful for like 20 years. 91-92, same thing. Starts all 82 games, 16.3 points a game, 49.4 field goal percentage, which was a career high. But they run into Charles Barkley, or not? No. This is before he got there. They run into the Suns though.
Yeah, they run into the Suns. They get swept first round. 92-93. He has a really great.
This might be his best season.
Point percentage. So, 17.2 a game. And you can kind of see he talks about it because they actually get a new coach in this time. Check out this out. There's so many spider webs.
Yes.
But they end up getting rid of Tarkadian.
Yep.
And then Sean said this because Sean is like a class act where he's just like, I don't have anything against them. It was just the way it was being that the game was being played. I wasn't necessarily taking all the shots I would want to take. The game in which after he got fired, he goes off on his career high 41 versus the Mavs, and he does have his highest scoring season with 17 points. So, and it's one of those things where going into this next season, you're probably thinking like, this is the Spurs team that we can actually start progressing in the playoffs.
Well, and I mean, he made the All-Star team that year for the first time. They had a very competitive Western Conference semifinals against the Suns, who made the finals that year. But yeah, you're right. You're thinking, oh man, someday this bridesmaid will be a bride.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the era where you thought that it would be the case. And 93-94, though, on October 1st, 1993, before the season starts, Sean's not in San Antonio anymore.
Well, it's interesting because he said it caught him completely off guard. And this is American sports so much where they were just like, hey, you're traded. And he was just like, I don't want to go there. and which...
Oh, come on, Chris. Everyone wants to go to Detroit.
And he said that where he started to struggle with his kidneys. He found out he was traded to Detroit. He went home to Tucson, and he said that they put him on prednisone or something like that. And when you get that for your first series of taking it, you gain like 10, 15 pounds.
Oh, geez.
So he said he showed up to like training camp overweight and like was explaining it to him, and they were just kind of like, no, we don't care. And he said he was
Are
just
you
like,
a doctor, Sean?
it was not the type of environment coming from the Spurs in which different organizations are ran, different.
Well, this is the Pistons when they're god-awful, right about to draft Grant Hill.
Yes.
Those bad boys. So he's going to a crap team.
Yes, and he said it was very dysfunctional in the locker room. Nobody played for each other. And he said it was almost the exact opposite of the mentality that the Spurs had.
Well, do you know why they made the trade or who they traded for?
To old Donnie Rod.
Yeah, so they traded Sean Elliott to the Pistons for Dennis Rodman for the rebounding help.
Yeah.
Because when you're facing Charles Barkley or Akeem Olajuwon
and the defense and the
guy that may or may not have impregnated a 12-year-old, we don't know, Karl Malone.
We don't know what Karl Malone does. That's allegedly.
Karl Malone does what Karl Malone does.
That's right. And so they make a multi-way trade for Rodman, thinking that's going to improve. It doesn't improve either team.
No, I mean,
really.
San Antonio gets... I mean, they're still making the playoffs and staying like one of the top
relevant
2 or 3 teams in the West, but it's not really taking them anywhere because in 93-94, Sean only averages 12.1 points a game, 3.6 rebounds, and 2 points. This is like a career low for him in his prime. And he's talked about kind of how, not necessarily depressing, but just disappointing it was to play for them. But he almost, in 94... February 4th, 1994, Pistons have had enough. He's had enough. And he was traded to the Houston Rockets for Robert Horry, Matt Bullard, and 2 second-round picks. Unfortunately for the Rockets, well, it worked out for him in the end.
I was just saying, they ended up winning.
Unfortunately for the Pistons, this trade was null and void.
Because he ended up failing his medical.
And all of the articles I read didn't go into why he failed his medical, but... I think is what we'll discuss as we've discussed before. It probably somehow kidney related.
It was definitely kidney related. He said something I saw that the Pistons said you don't have to make a statement about failing the medical.
Oh, so it wasn't made public. It was just like that's what it was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I think he was trying to just keep that quiet. I thought it was interesting because Greg Popovich was an assistant coach with the Spurs when he was with the Spurs.
Yep.
And they did 2 summer leagues where they would go around Texas and try and drum up support, like try and get fans in these like rural areas for the Spurs. And he's just like, yeah, me and Pop became like really good friends. I saw him when I was at the Pistons. and I told him I was just because he was Popovich was assistant coach at Golden State.
Yeah,
And they both said it. They were just like, man, I really just miss playing for San Antonio because the way the organization is.
Oh, come on now. Everyone wants to be in Oakland and Detroit, Chris.
Well, and then we see because the season ends, he's still with the Pistons, and the Spurs do go in to trade for him.
Yep. July 1st, they traded, or in July, they traded first-round pick Bill Curley, who was a center, and then a 1997 second-round pick to get Elliott back. And he's not going to fail his physical because you've already had him before. So
well, and this is what this is what everyone is saying, because they said if you draft this guy, we'll trade you for him. Yeah. And they said, God, I hope they don't pull the rug out because we don't want this center.
No, not at all.
They didn't want him like even a tiny bit. And then they were asking Sean Elliott, like later on, they were asking me, it's just like, if I had to go back to Detroit, if that deal didn't go through, I was planning on retiring.
Oh, how disappointing with that?
Isn't that crazy?
So much meat left. It crushes your soul.
Isn't that crazy? Because he was just like, my kidney was all messed up. They were being dickheads about it. It was just like, this isn't worth playing. He goes back to the Spurs, and
this was the team I fell in love with basketball with. This 94-95 team. They go 62-20, which is the best record in the NBA. Robinson wins the MVP that year, but Elliott averages over 18 a game and 3.5 rebounds and shot almost 41% from three-point range. They were unstoppable with Robinson, Rodman, and Elliott in the front court.
Yep.
I mean, that was ridiculous. The playoffs, they're the number one seed, so they sweep the Nuggets. They beat the Lakers in 6. Elliott scored 26 points in the game clincher to beat Los Angeles. It sets up a showdown with the Rockets, which we've talked about on 2 different episodes. One good, one bad. Basically, Hakeem Olajuwon just makes everyone his bitch.
Yes, he really does. He really dominates, and you see...
this is when Dennis Rodman turns on David Robinson.
Yep. And well, you see, Hakeem dominates against the MVP. That's why it was such an important game. This isn't one about Hakeem. Let's get back in.
I'm just saying that it felt bad for Sean because it's like he could have been on that team and the team that was the defending champs the year before.
The 2 teams that I really wanted to see him on is the Rockets and the Bulls right when he got drafted. That would have been so awesome.
He'd been on that first 3-peat Bulls team. Oh man, would that have been dope?
They would, yes. Oh, I would have been so into it.
That would, wow. Oh god. So 95-96 just makes the All-Star game, second time in his career. The game's actually in San Antonio, which I thought was pretty cool. Career high 20 points a game, 41% again from 3-point range. And had a career high 161 three-point field goals that year. Almost the same record, 59-23. First round, they beat the Suns in 4, but in the Western Conference semifinals, suffer some disappointment to Karl Malone. Doing Karl Malone things.
Just doing a Karl Malone.
They lost by 27 points in Game 6 to have that series end. And now we start talking about the injury bug.
Yeah, he goes through 2 years of injury. Robinson goes through 1 with him. And this is what everybody was fearing, but I feel like he really showed everybody that he did have longevity in the NBA.
He was a tough dude because he's still playing games. It takes a lot to keep him on the bench. He only played 39 games in 96, 97. But these aren't kidney-related issues.
No, it's,
tendinitis in his right quadriceps. And the following year, played only 36 games because of a knee surgery. But because of him and Robinson being out in 96, 97.
Who do they get?
They get Tim Duncan.
They get old Timmy Dunk.
And they win the lottery and basically, we don't suck anymore. Everyone's healthy and we get this guy.
Well, I was just going to say, they literally get the best team. That's what's so ridiculous is they have stars at almost every single position and a weird-ass looking point guard.
Avery Johnson.
Named Avery Johnson. Who does not look like a human.
He has the smallest ears. I don't know.
It's insane. Great point guard.
Yeah. 98-99 though. After a couple injury years,
A little lockout.
lockout, Chris. I mean, this is professional sports.
We talking practice?
We talking about lockouts? We talking about lockouts. He plays in all 50 games this year. Spurs have the best record. Over 11 points a game, over 4 rebounds, and they're the number 1 seed. Only, people still at this time, don't forget, they were crapping on him, like saying, "Oh, they're gonna blow this."
I was just gonna say, because
they talk shit about Robinson, they talk shit about Elliott, like.
And going into it, they have been 1 or 2 going into the playoffs and lost. So it is kind of like you do see this. They end up dominating the Timberwolves, beating the Lakers.
They closed down the Great Western Forum. They told Shaq and his penis, get out of here.
That's true.
They did. They swept them. And then we get into the Western Conference Finals to face the Jailblazers, and they're taking the highway to the danger zone.
There you go. We're getting into game 2.
Yeah, so they win game 1, up 1-0. They're at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, May 31st, 1999, Memorial Day. And the Spurs don't come out. I remember watching this game. They looked horrible for about the first 2.5 quarters. Just absolutely horrible, including Sean. And he really wasn't getting shots in this game at the beginning of this game. They were down 14 at the halftime. They were down 52-34 in the third quarter and never led the entire game. They were down since the opening tip-off. But then in the third quarter, who got hot shooting?
Sean gets really hot, and this is something that he talks about that he didn't feel at the Pistons that he felt at the Spurs, was when he would go cold, they'd be like, all right, we're going to get it to somebody else. When he would go cold with the Spurs, everybody would still just be like, yeah, well, he's going to hit shots. There wasn't like that, and that's what he felt like in this game.
Guy.
Yeah, that's what he felt like in this game, was just like, I was cold earlier, but now I'm going to get hot, like, Tim Duncan does when he melts your icy heart. But that's what I mean.
With a cool island breeze.
He really keeps the Spurs in this game in the second half.
So they cut the lead to 7, 67-60 when the third quarter finished. And it's going back and forth with 12 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Damon Stoudemire, a player U of A only got because of Sean Elliott making the program good.
It's very true.
Not taking marijuana through Tucson International Airport. He makes one of his 2 free throws to increase Portland's lead to 85-83. Spurs call a timeout to get the ball to half court, and they call a play. They call a play to win the game. To win the game with who?
And I thought this was interesting. Steve Kerr and Sean Elliott were actually supposed to be lined up on opposite sides.
Yep.
And they said they almost saw them going to their sides and almost were just like, okay.
It's one of those bear down moments, isn't it, Chris?
It really is.
I mean,
it was a nonverbal, just like, all right.
We've been doing this since the 80s.
So plays drawn up for Sean for a 3.
Mario Ellie throws the inbound pass, gets
almost
just in bounds.
Almost gets it stolen by Stacey Ogman.
Who, I will add, was on that UNLV team that ripped the soul out of the ass of Tucson in 1989. So we're 10 years later.
Just the spider webs.
Time for a little payback.
Sean gets it, and this is probably one of my favorite things, is he's on his tiptoes, and if he would have put his heels down, he would have been out of bounds. But he didn't do that because he's a beautiful ballet dancer.
Yes, he is.
And it's one of the best shots if you see it, because he really is on his tiptoes. He shoots it over 7'6" Rasheed Wallace. But literally, Rasheed is so close.
He should have had. I can't figure out how he didn't get it.
No, seriously, if you watch it, all of these things, not being out of bounds, shooting it over his head, making it. That's why he's the Minnesota Miracle Man.
Oh God!
Oh wait,
quack,
quack, quack. I thought one of my favorite things when they were in the huddle, because he was going off, he had. In the second half,
he's the only reason they came back.
They asked him, they were just like, well, how do you feel? He just goes, I think I got one more in me, which is one of my favorite, because that's all it was just one more. And they said that going up 2-0 in that series really gave them the confidence to be like, yeah, this is our series. We're never going to lose this.
And I mean, so he had 9 seconds left, sinks the three-pointer. They're up by 1. They win 86-85. 22 points in the game for Sean, almost all of them in the second half, which is crazy. And like you had alluded to before, after that game, if you're Portland, leading the entire time, thinking you've stolen one on the road, that just had to destroy you.
Oh yeah, it was so disheartening.
It's
called the Memorial Day Miracle, which kind of became like his
calling card
because it really was this thing that you could stamp on his career and be like,
the Memorial Day Miracle Man.
Yep.
That's what he is.
That's what he is.
So they close out the next 2 in Portland, and they go to the NBA Finals. Their first time in the NBA, first ABA team to make it to the and Sean's first NBA Finals. 17 posts. So they go to the finals. They end up winning in 5 games
Against the Knickerbockers. Charlie Ward.
It's
a sad one.
Latrell Sprewell.
Check out those episodes. We don't have a Sprewell one, but we probably will because he's a problem.
He's a fun guy.
It was a bummer series for me, being a Knicks fan, but I remember watching it and just being like, yeah, the Spurs are going to win. Like, they were just even set up to beat like the Knicks with Robinson and Duncan because like you just couldn't guard both of them. And
Duncan went off in this series. I remember. This was like my first happy sports memory.
Yeah.
Like, oh, the teams I like can win shit. So 17 postseason games. I wanted to bring this up. Almost 12 points, shot 40% from 3-point range. He's an NBA champion. But what makes this even more incredible, he's probably doing this at about 60%, 50% of his regular living health.
So shortly after they win the NBA championship, he announces that his kidney is failing, and it has been failing for pretty much the entire playoffs or season. It's hard to say. And that he is actually in need of a kidney transplant.
Yeah. He's talked about how after the 92-93 season, like we brought up with that Knicks Rockets trade from Detroit, he was diagnosed with focal segmental glomerular sclerosis. I'm not a doctor. Basically what the disease is, it scars your kidneys and inhibits the ability to filter excess fluids, waste, and toxins from the blood. What the hell, man?
So his kidneys really are shutting down and just not working.
Basically, he said since they caught it so early, the doctors could monitor him. And since he's an athlete, he stays in top shape. But, like, you're going to need a new kidney at some point.
Yep.
And it's even remarkable that he played in these postseason series, was the best big game player to fulfill the Lute Olson Silver Fox prophecy. But, he needs a new one.
Yep.
It's time.
His brother ends up stepping up and donating it, Noel. And it works. Sometimes transplants don't work. Steve Kerr actually said it. So he was just like, we just won the championship. Literally, like, I'm about to go celebrate. I'm about to go, like, play golf and, like, relax. And he just goes, I get a call, and they're like, so Sean's in the hospital. He needs a new kidney. And he was just like, what? Like, it was such a, I can't imagine, because he didn't tell anybody on his team. You know what I mean?
But I mean, you think about it, the finals are over late June every year. You know, August 16th, 1999 is when he needs a new kidney.
Yeah.
When they're having this surgery. And you were I mean, if you want to retire after that point, that would have been like, oh, okay, well, you've done everything in college and pro, but no. He plans a comeback.
March 13th, 2000, first player to ever come back from a kidney transplant to play in the NBA again.
I don't think we're ever going to see that again.
No,
maybe with medical science, but like some of these guys, unless it's like super pre-existing.
Yeah.
Like, but that's most new people with new kidneys, like if you live a regular life, you're doing awesome. So it's first game there at the Alamo Dome, and throws down a thunderous dunk with former Wildcat Jason Terry, who wouldn't have been there if not for Sean Elliott on the floor against the Hawks.
I did think it was interesting. Greg Popovich said, he just goes, there are just some moments that I just can't get out of my, like, it's just like such a moment that I'll forever be with. And he talked about, because him and Sean were friends for so long, and he was just like seeing him come back and going right down the pipe and dunking it. It was just like I didn't think I was ever going to see that again, and then I got to see it, and that's what it meant for him to come back. I feel like, yeah.
Well, and you take away the Admiral, maybe George Gervin. Who's the most popular player in that franchise's history?
Maybe Duncan. Duncan's just not popular.
But
That's what's
what I mean.
crazy.
That's what I mean. Like
you're
fan
not wrong.
favorite.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
That's what I mean. Like,
yeah.
But Sean Elliott, he's beloved there.
You're right.
He's Tim Duncan. You just kind of like assume, oh well, he's just gonna do Hall of Fame awesome things.
Yes.
But played in 19 games that season, which incredible. He comes back for one more in a backup role in 2000-2001. Averages almost 8 in a game in 52 games with a new kidney.
With his brother's kidney.
I wonder if he paid him a cut of that season's salary.
When he was off for his first kidney, when he was recovering from that, he actually started to do announcing.
Which is great because he's fantastic in that role.
Yep.
Like, just very personable, very smart.
Knowledgeable, yes, about the game.
You think of Bill Walton and imagine the exact opposite.
There you go.
Stays on task, but is funny and happy.
Him and Bill would probably be a great duo.
Maybe. He'd have to reel him in pretty good.
I'm just saying.
So yeah, he starts his broadcasting career after that. Was on NBA on NBC for a season and then doing ABC Sports and ESPN. And in 2004, 2005, he's been doing it ever since.
He's the
Spurs
commentator for the Spurs, which that's like you were saying. For me, not being a Spurs fan, I'm like, oh yeah, Tim Duncan, and then realizing it, you're like, oh yeah, I bet Sean Elliott is a bigger star because of all of this being the voice now of it. Like, there's so many things with it, and just like he definitely came in when it was horrible, like the Admiral, and changed this whole organization all around.
Yep, he does in 2005. Did want to add his number 32 was retired by the Spurs. Much like his 32 over there at McHale Center.
I was going to say, so his 32's retired at U of A and the Spurs. Not at Cholla. There was a better high school player.
Tucson. The basketball scene in this city. Oh, the high school.
There's so many 32s coming out of Cholla. They couldn't pick Sean Elliott. But well-deserved retired jersey. I love the fact that him and David Robinson got that championship, even though it was against my Knicks. It still was like one of those you were like, oh, yeah, those two really deserve that.
No, I did want to bring up career stats for 12 seasons. 14.2 points a game, 4.3 rebounds, 46.5 field goal percentage, shot almost 38% from three. Postseason, just as good as far as very similar stats. 2-time All-Star, 1-time NBA champion, and in 2018, College Basketball Hall of Fame.
Yep.
And I've alluded to it before in this podcast. Without Sean Elliott, I don't know if he's necessary. I would say he's still the best player in U of A history, but he's also the most important. You could make an argument maybe for who's the best, but not the most important.
Well, I was going to say, I feel like he's the best college player that U of A ever had. So I feel like other players have gone on to NBA and have more storied careers. But for everything that he did and leading scorer and just being a fucking kick-ass dude, we got to give it up for Sean Elliott.
Tucson's own Sean Elliott.